Canada. At the dawn of the 20th century, it was a young nation of just 8 million people, tied to Britain, with a tiny military and little influence on the world stage. No one expected Canada to become a major military power. Yet in the First and Second World Wars, Canadian soldiers, sailors, and airmen would fight against some of the world's most powerful nations: Germany, Austria, Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, Italy, Japan, and more. This is the story of how Canada, underestimated and overlooked, stood against 7 nations in 2 global wars, and emerged as one of the toughest fighting forces of the 20th century. In August 1914, Britain declared war on Germany and Austria-Hungary. As a dominion, Canada was automatically at war. But no one expected much from Canada. Its army was tiny. Its navy was practically non-existent. Yet within months, 30,000 Canadians volunteered and sailed to Britain. Over the next 4 years, more than 600,000 Canadians would serve. A massive effort for such a small nation. Section 2. Baptism of Fire. Facing Germany. 1915. 3 minutes. The Canadian Expeditionary Force faced its first great test at Ypres in April 1915. The Germans unleashed chlorine gas, the first poison gas attack in history. French and British troops broke under the attack. But the Canadians held their ground. Wrapping urine-soaked cloths over their mouths to survive the gas, they counterattacked and saved the line. Canada had faced the German army, the most feared force in the world, and proven its courage. In 1916, Canadians fought at the Somme. The price was horrific. At Beaumont-Hamel, the Newfoundland Regiment was nearly wiped out in a single day. Thousands of Canadians died in muddy trenches for a few hundred yards of ground. But their reputation grew. German soldiers began calling them storm troops, elite shock units used for the hardest battles. April 1917, Vimy Ridge. For years, British and French attacks had failed. The Germans fortified the ridge, confident it could not be taken. But for the first time, all 4 Canadian divisions fought together. With weeks of careful planning, rehearsals, and the new tactic of a creeping artillery barrage, the Canadians stormed the ridge. In 4 days, they captured it. A victory where others had failed. Vimy became a symbol. The moment Canada stepped out of Britain's shadow and proved itself on the world stage. After Vimy, Canadians fought relentlessly. They faced the Germans in battles at Passchendaele, Amiens, and Cambrai. During the 100 Days Offensive in 1918, Canadian forces broke through German lines again and again, forcing Germany's retreat. By the end of the war, Canada had lost 61,000 dead and 170,000 wounded. But Canada had faced Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, and earned recognition as one of the most effective armies of the war. At the Paris Peace Conference, Canada signed the Treaty of Versailles independently, a symbolic step toward true nationhood. In September 1939, war returned. This time, Canada made its own decision, declaring war on Germany a week after Britain. Canada's military was small, an army of 4,500, a navy of 13 ships, and a modest air force. But once again, Canada mobilized. Over 1 million Canadians would serve in uniform. This time, the enemies were even greater: Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Imperial Japan. Canada's most important contribution came at sea. The Battle of the Atlantic was the longest campaign of the war. German U-boats tried to cut supply lines to Britain. The Royal Canadian Navy, with just 13 ships in 1939, expanded into the 3rd largest navy in the world by 1945. More than 400 ships. Canadian corvettes and destroyers escorted tens of thousands of merchant ships, battling U-boats in stormy seas. By war's end, Canadian escorts had sunk or captured more than 30 German submarines and kept the Atlantic lifeline alive. Canada also became the aerodrome of democracy. Through the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, Canada trained over 130,000 aircrew from across the Allied world. Canadian pilots fought in the Battle of Britain, bomber campaigns over Germany, and anti-submarine patrols. The Royal Canadian Air Force grew into one of the largest Allied air forces. In 1943, Canadian soldiers landed in Sicily and later mainland Italy, fighting against German and Italian forces. They faced brutal mountain battles at Ortona, earning the nickname the hardest fighting troops in the Mediterranean. Once again, a small country was punching far above its weight. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, Canadians stormed Juno Beach. Facing heavy German fire, they fought house to house through towns and fields. By the end of the day, they had advanced further inland than any other Allied force. From Normandy through to the liberation of the Netherlands, Canadian troops played a decisive role in the final defeat of Nazi Germany. Canada also fought in the Pacific. In 1941, 2 Canadian battalions were sent to defend Hong Kong against Japan. They fought bravely, but were overwhelmed. Hundreds died in combat, and nearly 2,000 were taken prisoner, enduring years of suffering. Later, Canadian ships and airmen joined the war against Japan until its surrender in 1945. By the end of the Second World War, Canada had the 3rd largest navy in the world. The Royal Canadian Air Force was among the largest Allied air forces. Over 1 million Canadians had served, 45,000 died, and tens of thousands more were wounded. Canada had fought against Germany, Italy, Japan, Austria, Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, a total of 7 major enemies across both wars. The world no longer saw Canada as just a dominion of Britain. It was a nation that had earned its place on the global stage. From the gas clouds of Ypres to the beaches of Normandy, from the convoys of the Atlantic to the mountains of Italy, Canadians proved time and again that courage, determination, and unity could overcome the greatest odds. The world had underestimated Canada, but by the end of 2 world wars, the Canadian military had faced down 7 nations and carved its name into history as a military power nobody expected. Thanks for watching this deep dive into Canada's role in the world wars. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe, and the bell for more military history documentaries. And tell us in the comments, which Canadian battle do you think was the most defining moment? Vimy Ridge or Juno Beach?